Good morning, everybody. I toast to you and all you do. I hope you're having a fantastic day. I was live for Iowa Pagan Pride, Prairie Land, whatever. So I was live for them. I forgot to share it, but I'll get that shared. Talked about altars in line with doing action, whatever. Action as a witch. But this morning, I was watching the Cake Boss show, and it was the episode where they paid tribute to his mom after she passed. And over the weekend, I had a close family friend commit suicide. And then right now, globally, all over the world, death is just something that's all over. I think that it's a little appropriate to talk a little bit about death, and death from a pagan perspective, and kind of dealing with that. So, yeah, it's such a touchy subject, I feel. That guy's got it. Anyway, so it's such a touchy subject because we live in a society that is built off Christianity, and in that faith, death is perceived as much different. One of the ways that they differentiated themselves early on from paganism is they made this as a one life only, like your soul gets one chance. In most other faiths, your soul has many, many chances. It goes through many lives, and it's not that in one life you have to get it perfect or right or get it all together, but in all of the lives that you go through. So when you start talking about death, there is such a fear. So many people fear death because it's the end. Totality. No, And so a lot of people fear that. And then they fear that they don't know what's going to happen next. And the only experience they have with death is when they've lost someone very close to them. So it is this very strong remorse. There's a lot of grieving. And it just creates a lot of sadness. And then if you've ever been to a Christian funeral, they're really, really sad. I don't know what happened, but as a chihuahua, my dad thought it was funny to scare me as a kid and take me into graveyards. And okay, so I was young, and it was not cool. Anyway, so for a long time I spent being seriously necrophobic. The energy of the graveyards, memories of being scared by the graveyard, just that whole thing was really overwhelming for me. And it actually wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I was able to go. I was actually in Louisiana, where they have all of those very old, very beautiful graveyards. And I have this picture of me, and I'm on this side of there's a 6-foot fence, and it's a public graveyard. I could have gone in, but I was on the other side of the fence. I'm pointing, and there's a grave that's right there, and that's so close that I used to drive around the block, and it wasn't because I feared my own totality. It was that I feared the actual dead things, in the ground. Or I had a lizard that I had, my cousin and I broke the window. The lizard came in the window, and then I caught it. And we were in Texas, and I drove from Texas to Colorado with this lizard, and my grandpa told me, he says, that's never going to live. You're just going to end up in, and I would make him pull over, and we would catch grasshoppers, and it was hilarious, and it ended up living for 5 years. His name was Harry. He was awesome, and I would hold him and love him and take him to school, and he was my pal. He was this little wild chameleon thingy. I don't even know what kind of lizard he was. Anyways, so when he died, I was so necrophobic that I just put a towel over his aquarium and pretended it wasn't there anymore. And one day my mom comes in, she's like, what is this? And he had completely, it was just bones at that point. And then for a long time, I just kept it like that. It was like my museum terrarium, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, so it took a long time to be able to be comfortable with that energy because it's very heavy. And then, going to funerals makes that energy even more heavy because they always come back to, well, it was a good thing that they accepted Jesus because otherwise they'd be going to hell. And so that can be really, like, so you get that heavy feeling, and then there's all this fear, and so it's a weird topic to talk about just in general, is death. And then especially right now with so many people dying, but I think that's what makes it even more important, is that we have to change this concept. And especially if you are moving into the pagan faith, this is one of those like core philosophical beliefs that really has to shift and transition, and you know. So I always come back to the scientific law of energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed. And I think that this comes all the way down to the energy of your soul. And I think that our ancestors saw this because there were not so many people. There was a much stronger chance that you would be reincarnated into the same area. Now, with billions of people all over the world having babies every day, the chances of you being reincarnated into the same area or the same race or the same whatever is really unlikely. And it's more likely that if you were a white person in America in this life, you're going to be an Ethiopian in your next life. Like, it's just kind of, the goal of each life is to experience all that there is to experience in this existence. And if you look at a lot of the pagan faiths, even though they'll have different ways of saying it and addressing it and dealing with it and talking about it, one of the things that is kind of universal is that experience. Experience is what's important. And that you are to go out and experience and to learn and to gain this wisdom and to gain this place of higher, like Buddha says, it's not to be God, but to release these things from this world. And if you have never experienced these things, then it's really hard. Or if you're still in the process of experiencing it, then it's like you can't let it go. Hate, I think, is a really crazy emotion to be in touch with. And whatever life you lead, where that's the lesson that you're learning, it's just one of those things. You have to experience everything. Like, you see a lot of people right now who are experiencing that hate because they're on those extreme sides and that their life is consumed with this experience. And that is the lesson, that that's what they're learning in this lifetime. And, chances are in their next lifetime, they're going to be on the opposite side of that. So if they're a white supremacist in this lifetime, then they're going to be, a poor immigrant in the next life and have to overcome that same hatred that they brought into this world. And I think that's kind of like where we start to get this karmatic justice. My sister and I have this huge joke all the time. We're like, well, whatever we did in our last life weighed heavy on the beginning of this life. And mostly joking, I mean, kind of not, but it's just one of those things. Okay, so it's not, I'm gonna have to title this a ramblings video because this is such a vast topic that it's not something that I can just, hey, in 15 minutes, let's talk about death and reincarnation and the purpose of life and all of those kind of things. This is like a lifetime journey with, look at the ash falling from the sky. It's so sad. I mean, you talk about death. The mountains are on fire like crazy. It's literally raining ash from the sky right now. And think about our ancestors, and they would have been like praying and sacrificing and praying and dancing and doing everything in their power that they could to bring back the normal sun. It's probably about 10:30, and it's still, I mean, it's super hazy looking. It'll be like this all day. The sun just has this like red haze in front of it. It's creepy. But the earth itself goes through these transitions. And you see that in all aspects of nature, and animals, and plants. I love the story of the Lion King, and sometimes I think about all of the movies that I watched as a child, and I'm like, well, it's no surprise that I really, really drew more. When my dad was like, hey, you want to be a pagan? Here's this book about paganism. I was like, yes. Because I grew up watching, don't knock my coffee over. Heathen dog. Sacrifice the coffee. They can't, oh, there's a nose. Anyways. I grew up watching Pocahontas and The Lion King and movies like that where Ariel, but movies where you're talking about the circle of life and honoring nature and being one with that cycle and being a part of it and not in charge of it. I think that's definitely something that over the last 2,000 years, people have gotten this like, I am better than the world around me, and however we like to think we are, we're not. And you see the devastation that happens. Of forests are on fire, they're polluted, the world is burning, disease is rampant. Like, there are so many problems because we've tried to conquer the world, the natural elements, and the natural elements are like, no, 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 this is all one cycle. You can't be above this cycle, you are part of this cycle. And so that's what each life that we have is, a part of this cycle. And yeah, there's just so much, like, I could just like vomit hours worth of lecture about this, but we'll take it slow. Today we're talking, let's go back to death. So you see a lot of death right now, you see a lot of people dying, you see the earth dying, you see species dying out. Death is just this process. It's a part of the natural cycle, and without death we cannot have something new. So let's go mythological, I guess. Let's talk about the stories of the goddess and the god and the cycle throughout the season and where we are right now and why death is so heavy at this point. Like, not just because of coronavirus or that, but because we're almost to the end of the cycle, and it is on Samhain, or the last harvest, or Halloween, or whatever words you want to put. It's at this time from the end of October to the beginning of November, and that shift 40 days after 40 days after the equinox is technically when our ancestors would have celebrated this holiday. We now put it on this specific date of either October 31st or November 1st, because it's about, on average, I think this year that the equinox was a day late, so it's actually on the 2nd, but whatever. We don't have to be that precise. I mean, that's when it will be the most potent, but the cycle at this time is when everything is dying. The earth is dying, the god is dying, the elements are all going to their dormant cycle, and we're coming into that cycle where we'll be in that darkness, and then we'll come out of it with the solstice and rebirth and renewal. And then there is a time of healing. So that infancy and healing, so the god is in infancy and the goddess is in healing, is still a dark time, but it's a growing lightness. And we come to spring and fertility and growth and youth, and we continue through, and they get older and wiser and mature, and the earth matures, and we have our harvest, and then we continue on through that, and we have our second harvest, and then we're back again to the death, because we have to go through that cycle. And the earth goes through that cycle every year, the moon goes through that cycle every month, and we go through that cycle every lifetime. And it's just part of the process of life. And in these really sad times where there's so much loss, I'm just reminded and comforted by the fact that there will be so many more babies. There will be so much new life. There is so much new hope that we can transition through and come out the other side better. So long as we all make good choices and we stand up for what's right, and we don't keep our mouth shut when we see something bad going on. We gotta say something. That's another video. But as you go through this life, what's important is that you're getting out and you're experiencing it, and that you're being a part of it, and that you're doing stuff, and that you're allowing those experiences to weigh on your soul and to encourage you to grow and to become a better person and a bigger person and a wiser person and a stronger person. And then in your next life, when you're a baby and you start over again, you bring some of that wisdom with you. So you want to experience things to the deepest that you can experience them, so that they imprint your soul. Which is why past life regressions can be sometimes overwhelming, is because when you're getting in touch with that past life, it's an imprintation on your soul that you're getting in touch with. And that's like the link, the doorway, the key between you and that life is that experience. And that's the experience that you brought with you, and that's what's going to help you through this life and through the next life and remembering the past lives. But they're emotional, they're deep, they're soul cutting, or growing, blossoming, whichever, it goes both ways. A lot of the sayings that are like, it takes loss in order to understand love are very true. You can't have light without dark. You can't have good without bad. You can't have, love without loss. And you have to experience both things to the fullest and the deepest in order to have like the check mark. I know it seems kind of like mundane to think about it that way, but in the most mundane way, that's how it is. You have a list of check marks. You have to learn love and hate and peace and happiness and sadness and hardships and power and, lust and all of those things, so that you have experienced everything that you can experience in this physical existence. And then who knows, maybe you do ascend to a higher state of being, and maybe that's who is in heaven, the upper world, I also think that you can be a spirit guide for a short period of time between lives. Maybe you don't transition right away. Maybe you spend some time in an ethereal state. Who knows? It's all out there. What I do know is that I do have many memories from past life regressions. There are places that I've been to that I'm like, this touches my soul in such a deep way that it calls to me and I cannot ignore it. And it's not my memory. And sometimes they're memories of spirits, but sometimes they've been my memories. And they're very overwhelming because they're really traumatic moments, like battles and deaths and weddings and love and babies and those moments that truly imprint your soul. And so I can't deny these things. And it was really funny when I was a kid and people would ask me what year I was born. I would always say 1884, and they would be like, you mean 1984? And I was like, 1884. Always. No, without, it was just this funny, weird thing. And, one of those unexplainable parents are like, maybe my kid's a psychic because they keep saying this or that or whatever. But as all of these people around us are dying, and the earth is dying, and everything is dying, we just have to continue to remember that this is the end of a cycle. We are coming to the end of something, and in order for it to end, that's what we're going to need to see. And however sad it is, and the loss is very devastating. Like, I'm not trying to discredit the loss that the living have, because however going into the unknown and dying and moving on might seem a little scary and overwhelming, what's really scary is losing the ones that we love. And that's what's scary. And so that's what's hard, is being left alive to deal with that loss. And so in these times that we're dealing with so much loss, we have to keep in mind that the cycle will continue. These entities and energies and beings and people and the earth and everything will recycle through, and we'll see a new blossoming, and we'll see something on the other side. And however hard it is to see now, it will be better. It will move up because people will have learned their lesson. They'll be reborn into a state of better understanding. And, so support those people who are losing people. Reach out and tell them that you love them and that you're here for them, and support the living. And remember that the dead are not suffering anymore. They are not, dealing with the experiences of this life anymore, that they are moving on to the next. We can honor them on the upcoming holiday, light candles, say prayers, put out, different offerings, whatever it is that you do according to your faith and your presence, but honor this transition, honor this change. Let's go through this with power and strength and come out the other side better, and know that this is just part of that cycle. So I hope everybody the best through these really hard times. I offer my love and my support and a warm hug and a pat on the back and reassurance that it is going to be okay, and that yes, loss is hard, but know that you are the one that's suffering the most, and that the person you love is not suffering anymore, and that this is better. This cycle is good, and that will come through this stronger, and that you can call on those energies and send them your love. This will be a great time to talk to all of them. So if you've lost somebody over the last year, now is the time to reach out and just say, hey, I love you and I miss you, and I wish that you were still here, and I cherish the moments that I had with you, and honor them and their living state, and know that now they're going to go somewhere better, and move through this cycle, and that there is no hell. There is no eternal damnation where you're going to be punished, and no omnipotent being, creature, God of any kind would let his creation suffer a life of turmoil. He would just make you be reborn as a homeless person. Something of that nature. Some kind of karmatic justice. And maybe that's what hell is being born as the thing that you've condemned in this life. And that'll be your hell in your next life, is suffering as those that you have condemned. So think about that as you condemn people, or you condemn a behavior, or you say, no, that's wrong. And that goes both ways. So people who are on one side saying, oh, I hate white supremacists, how could they act like that? They're horrible people. I mean, they are. But you might end up one of them in your next life, so that you can understand what that hate is and what it is to be consumed by that. Maybe you already have, and that's why now you're like, I don't understand how they can be consumed with that. Just one of those things. And the more we understand this process, and the more we connect with this process, the more wisdom that we can gain from each life, and the growth that you can have. So, again, I toast to you and all you do. I send my blessings and my love and my strength to you to help you get through all of the things that you need to get through in these really troubling times. And much love.